For 6 years, Aunt Wang had worked in our household, but one day, she suddenly announced she was resigning. I cried my heart out, and seeing my desperation, Aunt Wang hesitated. Finally, she decided to leave behind her daughter, who had inherited her cooking skills, to take her place. At first, I wanted to politely decline. However, when I saw a pure beauty with long black hair, standing tall at 1.8 meters, I fell silent. Lu Ruyan, Aunt Wang's daughter, stayed at my house and cooked for me for 2 months. Later, when the university semester began, I saw a familiar face speaking confidently on stage. I was taken aback. The senior looked exactly like Lu Ruyan. Noticing my reaction, my roommate whispered, asking about my relationship with her. Flustered, I casually replied, "It's just a cooking relationship." The next day, gossip spread like wildfire across campus, exaggerating the story of my supposed romantic involvement with Lu Ruyan. Damn it! No one ever told me that cooking could have another meaning. It all started after the college entrance exam. My parents went abroad for a vacation, leaving me home alone. At first, I enjoyed the carefree life until the day I learned the shocking news: Aunt Wang was leaving. I leapt off the couch and dashed downstairs. Aunt Wang had already packed her bags. I clung to her, wailing, "Aunt Wang, if you leave, how will I survive?" It wasn't an exaggeration. From middle school until my high school graduation, I had been eating Aunt Wang's cooking for 6 years. My stomach was accustomed to her food. The thought of never tasting her cooking again broke my heart. As I cried uncontrollably, Aunt Wang sighed, "My back injury has worsened, and the doctor advised me to rest. But maybe my daughter can cook for you temporarily. She's inherited my skills." Her daughter? I vaguely recalled Aunt Wang mentioning she had a daughter about my age. But I wasn't optimistic. She was young, her cooking couldn't possibly match Aunt Wang's. And wasn't it inappropriate for us, a young man and a young woman, to stay alone together? Just as I was about to refuse, a stunning figure appeared at the door. I blinked. If she looked like this, maybe her cooking didn't need to be that good after all. Aunt Wang spoke to the young woman in hushed tones. After a moment of hesitation, she walked into the kitchen. Aunt Wang turned to me and smiled, "It's about lunchtime. My daughter will make you a meal. If you find it acceptable, she can cook for you until you find a new housekeeper. What do you think?" Half an hour later, I was sitting at the dining table, staring at a delicious spread of 3 dishes and a soup. My eyes lit up. After the meal, I patted my stomach contentedly and asked, "When are you leaving, Aunt Wang?" "This afternoon. I can have the driver take you." Lu Ruyan, Aunt Wang's daughter, was a college student. She would come to my house daily to cook and leave immediately after. Our relationship was strictly professional. Still, her beauty was a feast for the eyes, making every meal more enjoyable. But Lu Ruyan was a woman of few words. After a week of this routine, I realized we had barely spoken a sentence to each other. That changed during a high school reunion. We started with dinner, then hit the arcade, and eventually ended up at a karaoke bar. Someone suggested a drinking game. Luck wasn't on my side. I kept losing and downed 2 cans of beer. Feeling lightheaded, I stood up to use the restroom. As I reached the door, I collapsed. In my hazy state, I vaguely heard Lu Ruyan's voice saying, "I'll take him home." Her tone was more serious than usual. She brought me home. I stumbled into the bathroom to vomit and noticed a cold, untouched meal on the table. That's when it hit me. I had forgotten to tell Lu Ruyan I'd be out that evening. Had she waited all night for me? The guilt was overwhelming. After that incident, I couldn't face her without feeling embarrassed. So, I escaped to my grandmother's house in the countryside for half a month. When I returned, my parents were back, and they hired a new housekeeper. They invited Aunt Wang and Lu Ruyan over for a meal and gave her a generous red envelope, thanking her for feeding me so well over the summer. At the table, I kept my head down, too ashamed to meet Lu Ruyan's gaze. I thought that would be the end of our story. But fate had other plans. A month later, during the university's opening ceremony, I discovered that Lu Ruyan was also at university, a senior, 1 year ahead of me. As she spoke confidently on stage, I stared in disbelief. She seemed like an entirely different person from the quiet Lu Ruyan I had known. My roommate noticed my reaction and asked if I knew her. "What's your relationship with her?" he pressed. Still dazed, I blurted out, "We just cook together." My words were loud enough to catch the attention of everyone nearby. Silence fell, then all eyes turned to me. My roommate blushed and stammered, "Why would you say it like that?" What's wrong with saying it that evening? I understood the strange reaction. No way. How could the meaning of cooking and making dishes evolve so drastically in modern slang? I stared at the screenshots my friend sent me from the university's trending forum. I almost fainted. The typically aloof senior Lu Ruyan. Secretly such a big deal that freshman is incredible. He hooked up with Lu Ruyan before even starting college. Does the freshman look handsome? Lu Ruyan doesn't have a boyfriend, does she? My senior courted her, and she claimed she wasn't ready for a relationship. Maybe Lu Ruyan has a boyfriend and keeps it secret. Is she a two-timer? Wait, check this out. Lu Ruyan is being confronted. I froze when I saw that comment. Soon, someone uploaded a blurry video clip. I clicked it instinctively. The video shook at first, but it quickly stabilized. It was clearly shot in secret. On screen, Lu Ruyan stood with a male student at the corner of a hallway. You clearly have a boyfriend, the male student accused angrily, so why act single? This is too much. Lu Ruyan's face remained expressionless. Then suddenly, she turned toward the camera. The person filming panicked, the phone shook violently, and the video ended with the crisp sound of a slap. My hand trembled as I held the phone. This. What should I do now? I've really caused trouble. My instinct was to type out an explanation in the trending forum, but halfway through writing, I hesitated. What could I even say? That her mom worked as my housekeeper, that Lu Ruyan took over cooking duties for me when her mom couldn't? It didn't sound right. Just as I was debating, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Seeing the caller ID, I almost flung my phone across the room. It was Lu Ruyan. Taking a deep breath, I answered, "Hello. Are you free after class? Let's talk." At a milk tea shop outside campus, Lu Ruyan and I sat face to face in silence. Only when the staff brought over my random choice of milk tea did I gather the courage to speak. "I'm sorry. I misspoke and caused misunderstandings. How do you want to handle it? I'll fully cooperate." Lu Ruyan traced the condensation on her cup, her fingers long and elegant. Her light movements made the frost seem to melt under her touch. I was mesmerized until she suddenly smiled. "You apologized. I thought you might be remembered." "Remembered what?" I asked instinctively, confused. Lu Ruyan's eyes darkened slightly. "Remembered how you got drunk and harassed me that night." For a moment, her words didn't register. "Me harassing you while drunk?" I tried to force a laugh. "You must be joking." Lu Ruyan didn't laugh, just stared at me. My face turned beet red. Leaning closer, I lowered my voice, "Did I really harass you?" Lu Ruyan dropped her gaze. "It wasn't that bad. You just grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go, hugged my neck, and insisted I didn't love you anymore." As I started to relax, thinking it wasn't too terrible, she added, "Then you started crying and tried unbuttoning my shirt." The waitress passing by gave us a startled look, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Mortified, I grabbed Lu Ruyan's milk tea and shoved the straw into her mouth. Caught off guard, she sipped reflexively, her lips curving into a subtle smile. I missed her expression entirely. My head was spinning as I resolved never to drink alcohol again, no matter the circumstances. I hesitated, determined to set things right. "How do you want to resolve this?" Lu Ruyan considered for a moment. "You know, having a boyfriend isn't such a bad idea." I blinked, stunned. "Be my boyfriend for now," she explained. "What?" She elaborated. "In name only, for 2 semesters, just to keep unwanted attention away. If you meet someone you like, we can break it off. I'll even explain things to her." I hesitated, then nodded. It was simple. I owed her for my earlier blunder and for what I might be done while drunk. "Deal." Lu Ruyan's lips quirked up. She raised her milk tea in a mock toast. To a successful partnership. And just like that, I became Lu Ruyan's boyfriend. The online gossip slowly died down. However, the homewrecker label stuck with her, though she didn't seem to care. A week into classes, the freshmen began military training. Dressed in oversized training uniforms, we sweated under the scorching sun, our routines monotonous and draining. One particularly hot day, my roommate nudged me. "Let's fake being sick and hit the medical office. It's south 40 degrees out here, man." I hesitated. "Think we can pull it off?" "Sure, just act the part." After our instructor arrived and put us through marching drills, I was just about to execute the plan when I noticed Lu Ruyan sitting in the shaded stands, watching us. "She's here. Why surely not for me?" My hesitation drew my roommate's exasperation. "Hurry up." Ignoring him, I staggered forward dramatically. "Report." He's fainted. Just as my friends carried me off, Lu Ruyan appeared before the instructor. "I'll take him to the medical office," she said. Carried off in a flat cart, I stiffened under Lu Ruyan's gaze. Only when we were out of sight did I blurt, "You can stop now." I was faking it. Lu Ruyan gave me a knowing look. "Your instructor's still watching." I sank back into the cart obediently. When we finally stopped, I clambered off sheepishly. "What were you doing at the training ground?" "Student council work," she replied nonchalantly. I groaned inwardly. "How is she always around when I'm at my worst?" "Let's grab lunch," she suggested. In her company, the day didn't seem so unbearable. Until a girl approached me at the cafeteria. "Hi, can I get your WeChat?" That night, I finally understood the reason behind his strange reaction. Seriously, the way new internet slang evolves these days is just too fast. Cooking and frying vegetables now have that meaning. I was staring at the screenshot a friend sent me from the school forum, nearly fainting. So, the usually aloof and cold senior, Ruyan, has such a major presence in private. That junior must be incredible. He hasn't even started school yet but already hooked up with Lu Ruyan. Is that junior handsome? Isn't Lu Ruyan single? My senior chased her, and she said she didn't plan on dating anyone for now. Could it be that Aji already has a boyfriend but kept it hidden, or is Lu Ruyan actually a player? The group chat was buzzing with gossip. Suddenly, someone sent a video. Look what I just saw. I froze for a moment, then instinctively clicked on it. The footage was shaky at first, clearly a sneak shot, but quickly stabilized. In the video, Luruyan was cornered by a boy at the end of a hallway. The boy angrily questioned her, "You clearly have a boyfriend, so why pretend to be single? That's so manipulative." Luruyan's face was expressionless, but then she suddenly looked straight at the camera. The person filming panicked, the phone shaking wildly. At the end of the clip, a loud slap could be heard. I sat there, my hands trembling. This was bad. What should I do? I wanted to explain everything in the forum, but as I typed halfway, I hesitated. What would I even say? That guy's mom is my housekeeper, and he has been cooking meals for me to cover for her absence. That doesn't sound right either. While I was still debating, my phone rang. Seeing the caller ID, I nearly dropped it. It was Luruyan. Taking a deep breath, I answered, "Hello. Do you have time after class? Let's talk," she said. At a milk tea shop outside the campus, Luruyan and I sat across from each other in silence. It wasn't until the employee brought over my randomly ordered milk tea that I found the courage to speak. "I'm sorry for what I said. It caused a misunderstanding about you. How do you want to handle this? I'll cooperate fully." Luruyan was idly playing with her cup, her slender fingers tracing patterns on the condensation. She suddenly chuckled softly, her voice tinged with something I couldn't decipher. "You're apologizing for saying the wrong thing. I thought you remembered." "Remembered what?" I asked instinctively, confused. She looked up at me, her gaze dim. "Remembered how you got drunk that night and took advantage of me." It took a moment for her words to sink in. Me, drunk, taking advantage of her? No way. I had zero recollection of anything like that. Trying to laugh it off, I said, "You're kidding, right?" But Luruyan didn't laugh. She kept looking at me. My face flushed instantly. Leaning closer, I whispered, "Did I really?" She lowered her gaze. "It's no big deal, really." Relieved, I let out a sigh until she added, "You just grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go, then hugged my neck and tried to kiss me. When I pushed you away, you cried, saying I didn't love you anymore. And then you started unbuttoning my shirt." A nearby waiter, overhearing, glanced at us with wide eyes. Panicked, I grabbed the milk tea in front of Luruyan and shoved the straw into her mouth. Startled, she took a sip, her eyes glinting with amusement. I didn't notice her expression, too busy berating myself internally. How could I embarrass myself like this? Never drinking again. Ever. After a deep breath, I asked her solemnly, "So, how do you want to deal with this?" Luruyan hesitated for a few seconds before saying, "I suddenly feel like having a boyfriend isn't such a bad idea. How about you keep being my boyfriend after class?" I stared at her, dumbfounded and speechless. Seeing my reaction, she elaborated, "I mean, just in name. My real goal is for you to help fend off all the unwanted attention I'm getting. It's only for 2 semesters, tops. If you happen to like someone during this time, we can break up, and I'll even explain the situation to her." Honestly, that didn't sound too complicated. Considering it was my fault she got misunderstood and that I had, well, harassed her while drunk, I figured I owed her. Helping her for 2 semesters seemed like a small price to pay. So I agreed. "No problem. I'll cooperate fully." Luruyan smiled faintly, raising her cup of milk tea. "Here's to a successful partnership." And just like that, I became Luruyan's boyfriend. After hearing the teacher's worry, we went to line up to ask Wang for an autograph. When we came out after getting the autograph, the big screen above our heads had already started counting down. The buzzing sound of the phone was almost drowned out by the bustling life. I was stunned for a moment and took out my phone. It was Luruyan calling. I pressed the answer button. The voices from the end of Get Out of Class were just as noisy. Faintly, I seemed to hear the familiar countdown sound. "Where are you?" I finally heard what he was asking. I covered my phone and said loudly that I was in Menjin Square. Someone pulled my arm. I looked at my friend. But he was looking somewhere with his eyes shining. "Siake, look at the beauty." I subconsciously looked in the direction of his finger. Then I paused. Luruyan was particularly eye-catching in the crowd. He was very tall, had 3-dimensional facial features, and his skin was whiter than that of ordinary girls. Many boys were secretly looking at him. But he seemed a little anxious. He was talking on the phone, frowning slightly, looking for something. My intuition told me. He is looking for me. I clenched my fingers holding the phone. In the bustling life, I seemed to hear the strong heartbeat coming from my chest, again and again. I looked at Luruyan and shouted to the phone, "Luruyan, look to the right." Luruyan paused and turned to look at me. We looked at each other across the crowd. At the same time, the countdown on the big screen officially ended. The boys and girls in the audience were screaming and cheering. "Happy birthday." Sitting in the taxi back to school, Luruyan kept looking down at his phone. I glanced at him. He was searching Baidu for who Bare Hands was. I held back my laughter and turned my head to look out the window. There were a lot of cars on the road. Many couples were walking hand in hand on the roadside. The vendors selling dolls and balloons were doing a booming business. It was very lively. Compared with the hustle and bustle outside, the car seemed particularly quiet. It was so quiet that it was a bit awkward. The driver took a look through the rearview mirror and said with a smile, the young couple had a conflict. I was stunned and spoke at the same time as Lu Ruyan. Without us, I glanced at him, and then he turned away sadly. I didn't notice it at the time. Neither he nor I denied the driver's title of big brother and young couple. When we got off the car and arrived at school, it was almost 10 o'clock in the evening. Walking on the quiet tree-lined avenue, I finally couldn't help asking, are you afraid that I will be cheated by netizens? So you come to find me. Lu Ruyan's shadow was stretched out under the street light. I was staring at the ground absent-mindedly, but he suddenly stopped. I was stunned. My sight moved from the shadow on the ground to his face. Lu Ruyan looked at me, with no expression on his face. After staring at each other for a few seconds, he answered my question that he was afraid that you would be cheated by netizens and worried that you would get into trouble, so he came to find you. I felt my heart skipped a beat and only spoke dryly, I'm sorry, I didn't explain it to you clearly. It's not your fault. Lu Ruyan said, I was too anxious. Why was I anxious to him? What am I, an important person? I was staring at him blankly. These two questions lingered in my heart. In the end, I didn't ask. Lu Ruyan silently sent me to the dormitory. Go back and have a good rest. Okay, I walked to the second floor. I stopped and turned my head to look out the window. Lu Ruyan was still there. He was standing under the street light. The light shone on him. It was like he was coated with a layer of soft light. But his figure seemed a little lonely. I was watching him intently. Suddenly, 2 or 3 boys walked out from the end of the road. They were obviously stunned when they saw Lu Ruyan. Then they started to whisper. When he came closer, a boy took out his mobile phone from under the table of others and came forward shyly. When I reacted, I had already rushed downstairs. The evening breeze woke me up. I wanted to go back, but it was too late. Lu Ruyan had already seen me. I could only bite the bullet and go forward. I pretended to hug his waist easily. Lu Ruyan, is this your classmate? The boy was stunned. His eyes looked back and forth between me and Lu Ruyan. After a few seconds, he suddenly apologized. Sorry, I didn't know you had a boyfriend. He disturbed him and ran back. Pulled into the dormitory building with other boys. The surroundings were silent again. Lu Ruyan's voice was slightly deep, but with a smile. Everyone left. Can you let go now, boyfriend? Don't think too much. I'm just going in. You said your boyfriend's duty. Let me block you from peach blossoms. The more I said, the quieter my voice became. Lu Ruyan nodded. I didn't think much about it, but I didn't expect you to be so competent. I guess this man must be laughing. But I didn't dare to look up at him. After just a hasty greeting, I turned around and ran into the dormitory building. This time I didn't stop. Ran back to the dormitory in one breath. Then threw myself on the bed. It took several minutes to calm my heart. I couldn't sleep again tonight. And the consequence of insomnia is, I slept for a whole class the next day. I was still confused when the class was over. Walking to the stairs, I bumped into someone walking towards me. The man was holding a pile of books. I bumped into him and the books were scattered all over the floor. Sorry. I quickly apologized. Squatted down to check his books. It's you, the girl smiled. You're not, is Lu Ruyan your boyfriend? My face turned red. You are his roommate. Hello. I picked up the books. I saw the girl was carrying a lot of books. I asked casually, where are you going to send the books? I'll help you send them. That's great. Thank you. The girl didn't refuse. It's on the upper floor. Our college changed the study room. I was asked to move all the books in our dormitory by myself. A bunch of conscienceless people. I smiled. Followed him upstairs. When I put the books on the table in the new study room, I noticed that there were several high school math tutoring materials in the pile of books. Aren't these for high school students? The boy took a look. Those are all Lu Ruyan's. I don't know if he was tutoring high school students last year. Or was he a tutor? He was always doing these. He took out a notebook. This is his notes. He was so serious. We really thought he had found a high school boyfriend. He was playing the training system. After he said that, he realized that he had said something wrong. Junior brother, don't take it to heart. I was just talking nonsense. I took it with some curiosity. I looked through the notebook. It is a bad behavior to flip through other people's notebooks. I didn't intend to look at him. But I saw the words on the first page of the notebook. It was so familiar. I turned it over. The more I turned, the faster my heart beat. The questions Lu Ruyan wrote in the notebook were all the questions I had asked that netizen. I hurriedly took out my phone and looked through the chat history with him. The steps of solving the questions he took to me were compared with the notebook in front of me. The handwriting was exactly the same. The paper was exactly the same. The content was exactly the same. Isn't this Lu Ruyan's Kyokyo? His roommate was surprised. He really solved these questions for you. Junior brother, you are really his boyfriend in the training department. How would I know? My mind was also a mess. The girl was still talking. You don't know. After we go to college, the high school content in our minds is automatically formatted. Lurian stayed up for several nights to catch up on the math knowledge. He said later what? I didn't hear clearly. At this moment, there was only one voice in my head shouting wildly. Go find Lurian. Go and ask clearly. Sorry, senior sister. I have to go first. I ran out of the study room with the notebook. I asked Lurian to meet us at the milk tea shop outside the school that we had been to before. He sat opposite me. Looking down at the notebook. There was a trace of inexplicable emotion in his eyes. I pushed the phone in front of him. Is this person you? Lurian is me. I looked at him. Nana spoke. Why is the get out of class over? He called me. Actually, I knew you. Much earlier than you think. The first time I saw you. I was in the 3rd year of junior high school. Last year, my mother found a new job. Working as a housekeeper in a rich family. After divorcing my father, he raised me alone. Paying for my education and schooling. This job made our family much better. It was not easy for my mother. In order to take care of me, he refused the request to live at home. Fortunately, the host family understood. And didn't say much. Sometimes he would tell me about work. He said that the couple were very nice. He said that their daughter was very cheerful and pretty. He wanted to make his job sound easy. He also wanted us to study with peace of mind. It gets dark early in winter. That evening, it started snowing. Mom hadn't come back yet. I rode my electric bike to find him. It was my first time to go to his workplace. It was also the first time I saw such a big and beautiful house. Snowflakes fell in front of my eyes, blurring my vision quickly. I blinked my eyes. When I looked up, I saw the gate was opened. Mom just came out. I subconsciously wanted to call her, but a boy ran out behind her. She was wearing a chubby down jacket and a woolen hat. Her palm-sized face was buried in the scarf, revealing only a pair of beautiful and bright eyes. Aunt Wang said crisply, "It's so cold. I'll let Uncle John take you there." Mom was flattered and waved her hand quickly. But the little boy pulled him and put his hand around her neck. I took off the soft scarf that was very soft when I wore it and put it around my mother's neck. During the struggle, a car stopped outside the yard. The little boy opened the car door. My mother smiled helplessly and bent down to get in the car. The spacious and warm car was much more comfortable than riding an electric car. My hands were frozen and stiff. I let go of the car door and rubbed my hands. Before leaving, I looked at the gate of the yard again. The little boy didn't go in. He was squatting at the door making a snowman. A voice came from inside, calling Siake, "Come in quickly, it's cold outside." "It's okay, I'll go in later." His voice was clear and full of vitality. Siake called him by his name very well. I didn't stay any longer and rode home. I occasionally learned a little about Siake from my mother, such as Siake loves to eat crabs. I will go to the seafood market early tomorrow to check. For example, Siake's grades have improved again. The whole family is going to Sanya to play. He can have 2 days off. For example, Siake has been a little greedy recently. I will prepare more food for him to eat at night. Sia. The little boy I only met once at the beginning. Gradually became clear and vivid in my mind through my mother's words. I didn't dare to slack off in my studies in the past few years. I studied hard and tried to make myself better. When I was in the 2nd year of high school, my mother said that she and I were admitted to the same high school after class. She asked me to help take care of her at school. But I didn't need to take care of her after class. She was very popular. She became the favorite of the class not long after entering school. No one bullied anyone. Everyone liked her. Everyone was busy studying for a year in the 3rd year of high school. Time passed in a flash. The college entrance examination was over. When she received the admission letter from S University, my mother's eyes were red. She was busy for most of her life. Finally, she got her reward. Before the university was about to start, the school invited me to share my learning experience with the new 3rd year juniors. Seeing Siake sitting below, I was not nervous at first. But I was overthinking it. Siake was sleeping soundly below. And didn't even look up at me. He might not even know my name. It was just that when the sharing session ended, he was dragged to the front by his classmates and said he wanted to add my contact information. I looked at the red marks on his face and his obviously confused eyes. I finally couldn't help but chuckle. When he added me, Kyokyu, I looked at his nickname, Don. He really didn't remember me. So, when I wrote down the steps to solve the math problem I sent to him on WeChat Moments for the first time, he came to chat with me privately. The first sentence was to ask who I was. I don't know why. I said I didn't know when I added the netizen. I replied after class. Maybe it was too popular. There might be many netizens like me whose origins are unknown in his address book. He started to send me messages frequently. He called me a great god, a top student, and sent me many cute emoticons. Then he threw me a few math problems that were not easy. Thanks to him, I was able to experience the preparation for the exam after entering college. The feeling of the college entrance examination. After the get out of class, the college entrance examination was over. He rarely sent me messages. Sometimes. I felt that he was like the scumbag often mentioned on the internet. My mother's waist injury became more serious. I persuaded him for a long time. He finally agreed to resign. The day he left, I went to pick him up. But he was called into the house. After class, he was hugging my mother's waist without any image. Crying heart-wrenchingly, the kind of thunder and light rain. I looked at him with a smile. But I heard my mother say to him that it was time for dinner. The ingredients in the kitchen are ready. I asked my daughter to make lunch for you. You eat first. If you are satisfied, she will cook for you during this time. Until you find a suitable housekeeper. What do you think? In a daze, I replaced my mother and became Siake's mother. That night Siake was not at home. I made dinner for her. But I couldn't wait for her to come back until 10 o'clock. I called her. After a few busy tones. The phone was picked up, but it was not Siake. Which Siake was drunk. I can't answer the phone now. Hello, can you hear me? The most sensible thing to do at that time was to tell them the address of Siake's house and ask them to send him back. But I said, where are you? I'll go pick him up. After picking up Siake, he was indeed drunk. His cheeks were red and he was still mumbling something. I sent him back home. After he vomited in the toilet, I cleaned his face and hands for him. It was not convenient for me to help with the rest. I sent him back to the room and settled him down. I was about to leave, but he held my hand. When I turned around, Siake was looking at me with his eyes open. He held my hand tightly and climbed up from the bed. I was still in a daze. He opened his arms and threw himself at me. Honey, I finally dreamed of you. The sound of woo was sweet and innocent. My heart seemed to stop beating at that moment. I let him hold me like a fool. His chin rested on my shoulder and whispered something again. It seemed like he was calling someone's name. I didn't hear who he was calling at that time, but now I can basically guess it. He is calling his 2D wife. When Lu Ruyan said these words, her tone was calm. There were no big ups and downs. But I couldn't help blushing as I listened. It turned out that he knew me so early. Lu Ruyan looked at the notebook. I didn't tell you my identity at that time. I'm sorry. It's nothing. I whispered. Lu Ruyan smiled. He doesn't smile often. But he looks good when he smiles. There will be dimples at the corners of his mouth. People can't help but get sick of it. I blinked my eyes and coughed dryly. You said before that when I have a girl I like, the contract between you and me will be invalid. Right? Lu Ruyan was stunned for a moment. The smile on the corner of her mouth disappeared. After a long time, he hummed. I have a girl I like now. I said, so Lu Ruyan, you can't be my fake girlfriend anymore. Knowing that Lu Ruyan pulled the corner of her mouth. It was agreed at the beginning. Do I need to explain what if he misunderstands that I interrupted him? I haven't. After that, Lu Ruyan stopped talking. She looked up at me. She supported her chin. She just looked at her without blinking. Lu Ruyan, can you be my girlfriend? Don't be fake. The real kind. Lu Ruyan breathed hard. The complex emotions in her eyes disappeared in that moment. Forgive me for being thick-skinned. I feel embarrassed when she looks at me. Do you have to think about it for so long? I gritted my teeth. I feel embarrassed for you to do this. Can you take back what you just said? After class I was stunned. This is a rejection of me. This is the result I didn't expect. I was dumbfounded for a moment. Lu Ruyan smiled and stretched out her hand in front of me. If you want to confess, I will confess first. Will you be my boyfriend after class? His smile was so beautiful. I agreed without hesitation for a second. After agreeing, I began to regret it. I should have hesitated for a few more seconds. This is too worthless. The hand on Lu Ruyan's hand was about to be quietly retracted, but it was tightly held by someone. Lu Ruyan held my hand. You can't regret it if you agree.